everyone, it's Alexis. I hope you are all doing well today. This is going to be a special video for me. I feel really excited. I get to share. Now, this is going to be a one part of a three-part video series, but I get to share today a sampling of my dies that have come out in chapter 2. I designed this with a very specific theme in mind. Florals. I think we all know at this point I'm obsessed with them, just like Jess Slack is, and I can't get enough of them, but I really wanted to design something that kind of spoke to what makes me happy with flowers, and that is wildflowers. So I have come out with 3 different thinlet sets, and this first one's called In the Meadow. It's a variety of dies that you can use all together or individually. We'll go into everything with it. And then, of course, you need something to put your flowers in. So I've come up with these floral vessels. And so I'll kind of explain the rationale behind each of those. And then last, but certainly not least, is the Floral Alphabet. This was something I've wanted to do for a really long time. And I'm really excited to explain how this works and different accessories and things that you can use with this. There are so many ideas and project ideas I have. I'm going to share a little bit with you today. I guarantee I will have more to come, and I'll be doing vlogs and other videos coming up. This is part 1 of a 3-part series. So there are some other die designs I had released, but I wanted to give each of them their own kind of educational series. And today we're just going to focus on the thinlets and different dies you can use them with and different ways you can use them. So let's jump right in to each of these die sets and all the different ways that I envision them being used, but I would love to see you use. Now let's start where my inspiration first began for this little collection of dies, and that was with the In the Meadow die set. Now the reason I wanted a wildflower collection is I love things that feel organic, and I wanted to do dies that felt really kind of more natural versus cartoonish or illustrative, I guess, in a sense. So I actually went and looked up real flowers and kind of tried to get an idea for the shapes I wanted. And I was inspired by cosmos and bluebells and stalk and different things that you kind of just naturally find out in nature. And I wanted to create simple layers. So what I did with each of the dies is I tried to put them together on the dies so that when you are cutting them, just grabbing one so you can see, all of the layering pieces are in one die. So you've got your main base right here, you've got the layering petal area, and then you've got your flower center. And I wanted to do that with each of the dies so that you could add a little bit of dimension with creating like different textured shades or even just tone on tones and having different levels. But I think the big thing, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this on camera too well, is that I also wanted to create indentations in a majority of the flowers. And the reason I did that is that one of my favorite things to do is to add gel pen, and specifically white gel pen, into the deboss section of things, because I just find that it gives like a really unique and fun look to the end result. I have a lot of different ideas where I've taken colored pencils and inks and the gel pen, and I've played around with trying to make these look more realistic. You can just do them out of cardstock. I have shown how you can do them out of one color, how you can watercolor them, how you can take colored pencils and markers and things like that and do a variety of things. Now, the idea with these was that they would also have something to go in, which is where the next die set came from. And this is called Floral Vessels. Now, Floral Vessels was something I've always kind of wanted, just a set that I can work with any of my floral sets. And that way I wanted to be able to cross the set I came out with as well as existing stuff that I might already have and that are sized to work with these. So we did a teacup with this fun little cute scallop layering right here. I did a wicker basket because I love the idea of a flower market and having a bunch of flowers in a basket. This deboss texture on the basket is actually part of the die. Again, I wanted to add a little bit of texture. Now these two pieces are the same exact die cut, but what you do is you have the light bulb and then you cut off the filament portion. I don't know if that's actually the filament. I should probably check that, but you cut off the bottom portion. I think the filament's what's inside. Ignore me. I'm not, engineer of any kind. But you can cut this portion off right here. And then I've included a decorative plate element right here so that you can turn it into a vase. You don't obviously have to include that if you want to just cut off the bottom and you can turn it around and have a vase. But I loved the idea of just adding a simple decorative element, and then you've got two different types of shapes out of it, so to speak. And then we have the jar, or a different type of vase. And I did want to point out that this works with our jar dome. So it's sized to fit inside the jar dome. So if you wanted to do a larger scale kind of dimensional project and have the flowers coming out, you could do that, or even have the flowers inside, make it a scene, which I'll show you. I did that a little bit. I'll show you that in a little bit. I did some scenes inside of these. And don't forget that with this, you're going to want to also pick up the jar framelit die set. And this will give you not only a cutout for the middle, but the most important part, which is the jar framelit, which will go around the outside edge so that you have a clean cover of the adhesive that comes on the dome. So those are sized to fit. I just wanted to mention that because I don't have any projects to share yet. That's a project I'm going to be doing, but I haven't done quite yet to show you, but I did want to mention it in this video. And then finally, I wanted something where I could mix and match smaller florals with these larger ones, but also have an alphabet set. And that's where Floral Alphabet came into play. I wanted something very simple and kind of had like a fun modern look to it, but I also wanted something that was sized proportionally that I could include florals on it. Now this die set comes with 2 of every letter, so you can create certain words faster, we'll say, if there's double P's or double L's. And then it also comes with all of these different elements that you see with the florals and the leaves and the foliage. So all the foliage you see, there's 2 of each, and they are on the die together so that you get that you can cut out 2 at a time versus 1 at a time. I really wanted to make it easy to put together. So this berry piece, the berries are attached to the berry element so that you can just add them on quickly. They are small in comparison to these florals, but that was intentional. I wanted to be able to marry the 2 together on certain projects. So I tried to make sure that stylistically these looked similar to these wildflowers so that they could be used together. So the intention is for these 3 sets to be used together, they work together, but they also will work with everything else in the chapter release and in previous chapter releases. And I've actually got a few projects here where I'll show you how I've kind of worked with them on different projects. So now let's get into what you can do with each set. Up first, I want to talk about In the Meadow because that's kind of where it all began. So I have an obsession with flowers. We all know this. I grew up with a flower garden in my backyard, and my mom's always had a love of flowers and has instilled it in me since a very young age. And I do think that it's easy to see how you could do these out of cardstock and just place them on a simple card and not think twice about it. And I very much have the intention of making cards like that. I wanted it to be fast and quick to put together, but I love a little bit of a challenge. So the first thing I did, and I want to show you, is I cut everything out of white. I cut every single flower, the stem, the layering pieces out of white. I assembled them, and then I watercolored them all. So you can see that you can kind of be your own artist because the base, the foundation, the shape is there for you, but then you can have a play with Copic markers or colored pencils, watercolors, they're distress inks and water them down, like any type of ink really, alcohol inks, and create your own kind of artistic flair. And what I think what I really love about that is that you can then put it just on a white background and the flowers are the statement piece. You don't need anything else, simple sentiment. And what I've done is I've added in some of our new liquid gloss right here so that it creates those dewdrops. So you can see how you can take something on a very plain background, add a little bit of texture and add a little bit of color, and you're golden. You can just get that card right out the door. Another option is to cut them all out of the same color, but then create your own scene. So what I did with this one, and I wanted to point this out because when Josh came out with this die set, Skyline Silhouettes, right here, which I've got a sample of what it looks like, I was so excited because immediately when I saw the grass and even some of these little other ones right here, I was like, I'm gonna do a scene with those. And I'm gonna take the grass, I'm gonna use it as my foreground, and then I'm going to put all of my different flowers there, create them in different heights. So I did that, but I wanted them to stand out from the background. So what I did was I took a background piece of white, inked it with a bunch of Distress Oxides, did a little splatter effect with water since it's water reactive, and then added a bit of our silver luster wax on top and some white gel pen into those debossed areas, and put that all together to create a tonal scene where the foreground is all black and the background is all color. So you could do this as a sunset, you could do this as a nice spring summer day. So it's really lovely that you can kind of take something, just cut it all out of black or even white, and then just put it on a background, and it doesn't have to be super complicated. I just have a lot of fun with that. But let's say you're not into card making. Something that I've really come to kind of adore is pressed flowers, and I am going to move these out of the way so that I can back this one in white. So I took a frame, and it's see-through, as you can see. And what I did is I watercolored those elements again. And then I glued them into this frame and put a little bit of inks and pens and stuff like that to kind of give them some dimension. But then down here I used the Spring Bloom sentiment set from chapter 1 by Just Slack, and I just made it look almost like a flower box and put them in this frame that it just kind of slides in and out because I wanted the look of pressed flowers, but it's a paper craft that I can keep up in my house all year round. So you aren't just like, these don't just have to be for cards or tags. You really can use them to make them look realistic even for home decor all throughout the year. So that's just a small sampling of what you can do with In the Meadow. I will have many more ideas to come, and I've incorporated this particular die set into a few other elements or projects. The next one is Floral Vessels, and I kind of had a little bit of a field day with Floral Vessels. I just wanted to try different things and show how they worked together between the sets. So the first thing I want to point out is how you can just use these floral vessels really simplistically, if you will. So the first one I just did a white card. I did some of those In the Meadow florals in the basket, and those florals I watercolored so that I could have a little bit of a different technique than just cardstock, but you could easily do this with cardstock and do colors that way. I just wanted to challenge myself a little bit creatively and try some different ways of inking, and so watercoloring was something I've been trying to teach myself how to do, and I thought is very easy. You just cut everything out of white. But you can see I put it in the basket, and one thing I forgot to mention is that I intentionally designed this basket with a slit in it so that there is a place where you can actually insert the flowers into it and the stems so that you don't have to like cut them down. You can actually put them in and play with the height. So that's an easy one. Just use them like that. I also liked the idea of taking the light bulb and creating a scene. So this one, I took the light bulb shape And then I took all of the florals from the Floral Alphabet set because they're smaller, and I did a little scene inside, or a pattern, if you will, inside of the light bulb. And then it's kind of hard to tell, but if I pull it up a little bit closer, you probably can see I've also added that liquid gloss again with some of those dewdrops. So another way to just create a textured pattern in there that adds a little something extra to the mix. This is another one I did with a mix of the Floral Vessels and some pattern paper. And then I've also used the In the Meadow on this one. So this one used the Floral Alphabet florals. This one uses the smaller In the Meadow ones. So you really are not limited to what you can put inside of these different vessels. I really did try to scale them so that you could use a little bit of both if you wanted to. Then there's two different ways I've got the vase shown. One is on a notebook cover. So I took this notebook cover. I love writing, and I love the idea of creating your own notebook covers or even your own little art journals. I masked this off and painted it with our white acrylic paint, used the Floral Alphabet right here. And again, I used those watercolored florals. One thing I did is I cut a bunch of flowers and I watercolored them all at once. That way, when I wanted to make projects, they were ready to go. So that's something I do recommend if you are gonna do the watercoloring. Just cut a bunch and watercolor everything at once, and then you can use it whenever you feel like. So I just did that. And then on this one, I did a little bit more of a distressed look. I wanted to show how just by changing the colors, you can keep this an evergreen die set. And I am going to do some fun fall and winter ones, but you can make this evergreen just by changing out the color of the cardstock and the colors you use on the florals, and even maybe what you set them in. So you could have some reindeer with flower crowns. You can do a lot of different things with these. But this one, I distressed the edges with our distresser on our multi-tool to give it a little bit more of a rustic feel. And this one, I inked the cardstock and also went in with that white gel pen just to give it a little bit of kind of a vintagey look. Not too vintage, but just a little bit more of a distressed look compared to these really pretty spring florals. And then the last one I wanted to show, idea-wise, is I took this particular die with the jar and I cut it on the fold, and I created a card base just out of that particular die set. And then I've added in my different colored florals from In the Meadow. And I just liked the idea of this being a stand-up card, which you kind of can't tell from up there, but it's its own card. It's a little mini card, so I could see that going with like a gift or for something special. And then you can stand it up as a decorative art piece as well. Or you can just lay it flat if you wanted to. So those are just a few ideas with the floral vessels. Something else I recommend and I've been doing is I don't necessarily always know what I'm going to do. So what I've been doing is just making a bunch of different pieces. So I've got different, I created a scene inside of the jar. So like a little dirt and some flowers growing in it. I've also wanted to play around with doing a night scene and maybe some bugs flying around. I just did a basket. I just got back from Texas where the bluebonnets are blooming. So I was very inspired by this and the bluebonnets in Texas to do this basket. And then, just a couple of teacups ready to go. I don't know what I'm going to do with those yet, but I have the pieces ready to go. And now I can make my project just a little bit faster. So something I highly recommend is it's kind of like when Tim tells everyone to do their backgrounds and just have them sitting around. Create your little pieces and then put them on a card. You can do something really simple like this and just put them on a white card or a black card. And that way, if you need to do a quick birthday card or Mother's Day card or anniversary card, you've already got pieces ready to go, and then you just put them on something really fast. And then the last one I wanted to show, and I'm actually going to do a couple little demos with this one, is the Floral Alphabet. Now, I did want to show one fun idea that I did where I didn't use the alphabet at all, but I used all the florals in the alphabet. And That is this butterfly one right here. Now this is a Big's butterfly from our Essentials die sets. So you can get that pretty much year round. And what I did is I cut both the dies out of it and I layered them together. So I just layered the smaller butterfly over the bigger butterfly and created something a little dimensional. And then I took all of those flowers that you see on the Floral Alphabet and I added them onto one side because I saw that stamp set from Spring Bloom Sentiments that has Stay Wild. And immediately in my head, I always thought of, okay, we're always kind of like having to play by the rules. And sometimes as artists and crafters and makers, like we like to color outside the lines a little bit. So I just thought, you know, the perfect representation of that is the metamorphosis of a butterfly. And so here you have this kind of, you know, beautiful butterfly, but then you have what it can become. And that if we allow things to stay wild, they have their own beauty in a sense. So I played around with this and just had fun with the flowers. It actually did not take long to create that. Surprisingly, I know people look at those minis and they're like, wow. But the reality is I cut those all fairly quickly, glued them together, added a little black and white pen, and then just glued them onto the butterfly. And it was pretty quick. So don't worry on some of these. They might look a little intimidating, but they really aren't. This next one, Mom, if you're watching, please stop watching because this is going to be your Mother's Day card. And if you're not my mom, you can continue to watch. So we do have Mother's Day coming up in the US, and I wanted to do something special for my mom. So I took the Floral Alphabet set and I used our sticky grid sheets to create my own bespoke sentiment. And that's what I'm going to demo. Is that was the biggest intention for me behind that Floral Alphabet set, was to create individual letters that you can then create your own bespoke sentiments. And I love using our sticky grid sheet because it allows me to line them up exactly how I want them to be, the size and the spacing, and I don't have to worry about it moving around as I put it through the machine. So I have got two different cards. I'm going to show you how to do that. But I took a blend of the florals in the Floral Alphabet set and a blend of the florals in the Meadow, and you can see I've taken them in there and I've added a lot of detailing onto them with colored pencils and inks and a white gel pen, and just made a really pretty floral card for my mom. You could also do a wreath if you wanted to, and use the flowers, or use another die set as a base. Like you could get a wreath as a base and then add these flowers on. So these flowers really can be used with or without the stems, and they can be used across different sets. I actually want to try to use these with some other florals that we have, which I probably will be doing. So the idea with flowers in my eyes is that you're going to end up using different things from different sets. And I can't tell you how many times I've taken like 4 different floral sets and I've used all the flowers together. And that was really important to me, to create a variety of different looking flowers so that they could work with different die sets you might already have in your stash. And then again, just another variation of using the bespoke sentiment is I cut the word friend out of a panel and then I backed it with some black, and then I've just added it to this card front where I've got 2 In the Meadows right there. I do think I want to add a little something to these, so I don't know that this card is done in my eyes, but I did want to show that how you can create those bespoke sentiments and then just add them to a card front. So let me clear this out of the way, and that's what we'll get into. Let me show you how you can create those bespoke moments. So one of my big reasons why I did the letters individually on this particular set was because I wanted to be able to create my own art pieces. I want to do like a quote, and I can basically make any quote I want, and then I can decorate around it with different florals and things like that for a home decor piece. I can create my own kind of tags for a gift. I can put someone's name on there. And the easiest way to do that is, I'm gonna pull this up a little bit closer. The easiest way to do that is with the sticky grid sheets. Now, if you aren't familiar with sticky grid sheets, this is one right here. We have them in 3 different sizes. So this is the size that fits our standard cutting pad. So it fits right on there. And then we have one that's sized to fit in our Sidekick machines. And we have another one that's sized to work specifically with our stencil and stamp tool. So if you're looking to use it in the machine, you're probably going to be using this standard size one right here, because it's sized to work with the cutting pads. You can obviously use it on bigger cutting pad if you want to, but it works perfectly on this one. So what the idea of this is that it allows you to use the grid to align your letters up. Now, one thing that I want to make abundantly clear is that when you are lining up your word, you want to do it in mirror image. So if I were to start and write and put the letters down the way I see it, by the time I cut it, it's going to cut it backwards. So you need to put your letters on backwards to you so that when it cuts them in the right direction. So this says mothers, which obviously it doesn't look like that if you're reading it the correct direction, but I know once I cut it and I flip it over, I can see it spells mothers. So that's something I want to make sure when you're using these, you're going to always do the reverse of what you think you need to do, because it's going to cut this direction. So I've got mothers on here, and I've lined it up along this 3-inch mark for another card I did, which I'm going to show you, because that was the center of that card. So you can eyeball it and put it down and then cut it afterwards, or if you know exactly what size your card front's going to be, or your tag, then you can cut this down to that specific size. So for this one, I'm just going to eyeball it because this is not the one I used when I placed this, but I can kind of tell where I need to place it based on what's already there. So because it's a sticky grid, it's going to hold that in place. And then all you need is a top cutting pad, and you can run that through. I'm just grabbing what's handy, which is a larger, it's for the Big Shot Plus cutting pad, but it's what I have, so it'll work. And you're just going to run that through. And what I do recommend having on hand when you're working with the sticky grid sheet is a die pick. And the reason being is when you first get this sticky grid sheet, it is sticky. And it eventually will get down to a tack that makes it'll hold things in place, but it won't hold them down too hard. This is a newer-ish sticky grid, so I will need to help this up a little bit just so that it doesn't tear or ruin the sticky grid. I also didn't really use a great cardstock now that I used something different on this, but here we go. So you're just gonna want to peel it up nice and gently, and then you can see you've got your lovely little mothers. Now you can reuse these letters, and if you're gonna keep cutting out, what I like about the sticky grid is that you can use it for, if you're doing something where it's repetitive work and you need to just cut the same card front over and over, you can do that because you've lined it up where exactly you need it to be, and it's not going to move around because these letters are stuck on the sticky grid. So you can keep cutting the same thing over and over again. But save those letters that are in there because you've got the positive and the negative, and you can use these on a different project if you want. So what I did with that is I cut it out earlier from a different color panel, and I cut out mothers, and I've put some foam tape on the back so that I can have it come away from the card front a bit, and that gives it a little bit more dimension and allows your eye to play with the shadows a bit. So I'm just going to peel away the last of this, and then I can glue that down, or adhere it down, I should say, because, whoops, sticky. Okay, let me just line that up. And then my idea for this was I kept the interior of just pulling out all my little pieces I've got here off to the side, because I kept the inner pieces from when I cut this out, because my idea was that I would glue back in some of these pieces. So I'm just grabbing little bit of glue. And I'm just going to put a little bit right here in the center. Put that central part for the O back in. And then I've got the little piece for the R right as well. And I'm going to use my intricate tool set with my Picket, and I picked up that small piece so I can just put it right into place. And you can see I've got mothers there. Now I've also cut out Happy and Day, and my idea was that I would put Happy Mother's Day on here. And then Happy above. And then I've got some of my die cut pieces from the Floral die set. And then that way I can go in and I can add in my flowers and just make this feel a little bit more bespoke for Mother's Day. So I would go in, add in the foliage and more flowers, but the idea would be that I could make that one of my mom's favorite colors. And I've got that kind of positive negative. I can use the positive pieces again on another project, and then the negative, if I wanted to, I could do like a mixed media background behind that. So I've actually got one prepped where I can show you what a mixed media would look like. So let me grab that real quick. So for this one, I had the letters Happy Day ready to go because of that card. And this way I can repurpose that. So I'll flip it over so you can see. I've got Happy Day in here ready to go because I used them just to cut out the letters for the other one. But I was like, well, why don't I just make another card front? So I'm gonna cut out that one real quick. This off to the side. Again, I'm going to use that die pick to kind of start peeling away the cardstock because this is a newer sticky grid, so it tends to stick a little bit harder in the first couple passes. Okay, so I've got my front piece ready to go. And what I did prior to coming in was I took some of our palette, and I took our palette knife from the mixed media set, and I created a fun little mixed media background with some paint splatters. And my idea was that I would lay this on top so that that shows through behind. So you can take these and then do something decorative behind it with the negative space. And then I could just take the piece I've already got ready to go, add that on, add it to another card front, and you've got a piece that's already been set aside and letters that you've already used. It really and truly, there is so many things you can do with these die sets, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, if you will. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little intro into the new flower sets I have out and what things you can do with them, whether you're just making simple little cards with the die sets or you're creating little journal elements for your mixed media journals or your travel journals, or you're mixing and matching different things that you might already have in your stash with things that are now in these new die sets, or you're just making beautiful pieces for your home. So there's a lot more with these, and I can't wait to explore and see what else we can come up with. But if you have these, please be sharing on our socials. Tag me, tag Sizzix. I am so excited that they're finally out. They've been many, many months in the making. So thank you already to people who have been sharing and showing me what you're doing with it. I can't wait to see what everyone else creates But yeah, just have fun with florals and with the alphabet. And if you have any questions, please let us know in the comments below. If you do plan to share, if you're making with these, please use the hashtag #mymakingstory, and that way we can see what you're making with it. Stay tuned because I have 2 more videos coming, and one will be on the crepe paper kind of die called Lysianthus, and that is how you say it, I promise. So that one will be coming up, and then I also have another one with our new Big L die called All in Bloom, and that one I'm really excited about because I love 3D flowers, and I hope you guys do too because I'm made a lot of projects for it. But I will see you again soon. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great day.